The moon landing. After that, how come no one's ever gone to the moon?
The idea of the citizen astronaut or the even space tourist, it hasn't been around for very long.
Why is it so important for us to send people to space?
There are commercial opportunities, there are medical and research opportunities. We see Elon, we see Jeff Bezos making these investments for the reason that we need to start planning for what a multiplanetary species looks like.
What was the thought behind reserving a seat for India to go to space?
India has a very strong media industry. There's a very large population. It has a burgeoning economy. For us, India was a very natural choice.
Our audiences need to understand how can they be the one to be able to get that seat to go to space.
We built an app which exists inside of Telegram. You rise up the leaderboard. The individual who has the most votes from the country will win the seat.
What feeling do you think people would come back with after they've gone to space?
This experience will be transformative enough that they'll have space as part of their lives. Suborbital rocket, which means it flies directly up, makes a parabolic flight, and it comes straight back down. It's about an 11-minute journey, and it goes to approximately 100 kilometers. You see the curvature of Earth, you see the blackness of space.
How expensive is it to send somebody to space?
Trillions of dollars are being spent since humans flying into space, and there aren't that many of us in space. Why is that happening?
Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for being on Aleena Dissects, first of all. Very excited to be speaking to you about space because that's something I don't think a lot of people talk about openly and have their questions answered.
Thank you for having me, and we're happy to answer whatever questions you have about space today.
I'm looking forward. So my first question has to be about that you guys are not NASA. You're associated to Blue Origin. I want to first ask you what made you believe that you could do something like set up a space research organization?
So for the last number of decades, the space industry has been dominated by national security interests, right? National space agencies have major programs that are funded by governments, and they're looking after human space flight and research that's related to those particular national security interests. And so we looked at the problem and said, trillions of dollars are being spent since the dawn of the space, humans flying into space, and there aren't that many of us in space, right? Why is that happening? And so with the advent of new technology, reusable launch technology, it's made it a lot cheaper to send people and things to space. And that has made the opportunity for us to look at this and say, can we make an organization, a next generation space agency that really is looking for people from all over the world who are not represented by space agencies or feel a connection to their space agency to have something to give them access to human spaceflight and research, right? And so that is what we've set out to do.
Okay, why is it so important for us to send people to space?
Space is the next frontier. Right?
Okay.
There are commercial opportunities, there are medical and research opportunities. Human beings have long chosen exploration to find new avenues of success in life, whether that is the new world or that's the bottom of the sea or it's deep into the jungle, whether that's research in this particular direction that's unlocked phenomenal discoveries like antibiotics or other cures for disease. We are propelled as a species to explore and find new territory, new terrain, and space is naturally part of that.
Okay, tell me that, like, now from the beginning, who came up with the idea and what was the conversation like when you said it aloud?
So my background is actually in media and entertainment, and
Okay.
I spent a lot of time as an entrepreneur financing films, developing companies that have focused on creating media IP, and we've invested in large-scale productions in the Hollywood ecosystem, films that have been distributed all around the world. And I'm always looking at things from a storytelling perspective with technology as a part of that, and seeing the way our market was moving, consumer behavior shifting after the pandemic, technology for distribution platforms had dramatically changed the way in which we were receiving content, who was getting it, when they're getting it, why they're consuming it, where they're consuming it. And I became less and less interested in investing into new money through old pipes, is the way I say it. So looking at big opportunities and saying, okay, we're going to go back out and we're going to put this through theaters, and we're going to then find out what happens when we go to video, and then we're going to go downstream into digital. The future is genuinely focused on direct-to-consumer opportunities. So how do we get the content from the creator directly to the consumer without having a large intermediary that's brokering that relationship between the two parties.
Okay.
And so there are emerging technologies that are going to enable that to become more of a reality for the financial component to the actual video content distribution or content distribution component. And so at the core of that, it's ultimately about a community building exercise. If you can build the audience in advance, and this is something you're probably doing here with your business, right? You build the audience member by member, bring people on, you're creating your content, you're connecting with the audience, you're going to direct to consumer. And that is where the next big franchises will be developed, the next big opportunities. And through a conversation that I had with a good friend of mine, who is Sam Hutchison, who's not here today, he had spent his career in the aerospace industry. Okay. And he was particularly interested in the way these same emerging technologies were going to transform his business. And he was looking at the advent of the new technology we talked about, like reusable rockets, saying there's a lot of new supply that's coming into the market, but there's nobody that's looking at the demand side of the business. And so if the industry is going to grow in lockstep, we need to see some innovation on the demand side. And so we looked at this and said, okay, well, with technology like blockchain, we have a way to create something where people can have a say and a stake in an organization, unlike they've had in the past, so more of a participatory ethos. And we can look at the space industry and we can say, how do we create a big community and give them access to the commercial potential of that long term? But also, how do we make that a reality today? And so we looked at the Blue Origin rocket, which is the New Shepard reusable rocket, tried and tested technology. It's a suborbital vehicle. You don't need to train for 5 days, 7 days, 12 days, 6 months. You need to train for basically 3 days, and it's safety training. So it really is a rocket that can be used by almost anyone on the planet. You have to be over 18 to fly. And you get this incredible live moment where you are launched up into space. You see the curvature of Earth. You see the blackness of space. And we said, hey, this is a really great opportunity. It's something you can do today. It's something that almost anyone can participate in. And it is something that is transformational because you get that experience, that overview effect that can really transform the way you think about humanity, where our planet, where we are living, how we're living. So what if we thought about that as an entry point? We have all the payload space on the rocket. We can look for a way to do meaningful research during that. And we can build a space mission around that we let everyone around the planet participate in. So whether you believe you can be one of those astronauts on that rocket, or you just want to help pick who gets to go and what gets to go, we want you to come join our community and participate in that way. And through the technologies that we're bringing to the table, we're looking for a transparent and open process that everyone can participate in and have that direct connectivity, that participation. And then we look for the media side to help amplify that message, because this whole mission is about the human stories. So we've been focused on countries that have had few or no astronauts on this mission.
Before we go into the mission, just to trace back a little bit, you said you started this organization with the intent of sending regular people to space and making it more accessible for them. But you said that you've come from a media background. Are we looking at you merging the media experience that you have in this space? And then how does that differentiate from this not being something that's done for entertainment, but something that's done for science?
Good question. So whenever we think about the media side, we certainly want to have the spectacle that's attractive, that can reach a lot of people in terms of marketing, to have those soundbite moments or those big video clip moments that are going to be viral, that's going to get people excited about wanting to participate, the visceral moment of the rocket launch. But at the same time, we have to have substance. And the substance can come in two major forms, right? One, through the human stories of somebody really wants to go to space, telling their story, sharing it with the world, and then being chosen by their population to be that representative from the country. So that's a hero's journey. That's a whole trajectory, right? And they run a campaign, they win the seat, and that story becomes something that carries on. They become an ambassador for the new space economy and this experience they've had back home. And those two things together are the right balance of substance and spectacle. The research side is a little less on the media side, right? So that's actual partnerships with research institutions. We have a partnership with Dr. Christopher Mason, who's over at Cornell University, and Dr. Elliot Overbay, who's now at University of Austin, Texas. And they've helped us design a science experiment platform so that the research that can be done during the suborbital trip can be meaningful science to future orbital trips, to future suborbital trips, and certainly meaningful to us here on Earth. We also want it to be really easy to understand and be accessible. So it's about creating parameters that are simple. The experiments that are submitted to be flown are a large number of them would qualify and they would provide for us some sort of meaningful results. And then also making that science open research. So it's the open science platform so that the science that will be done, the research, the results that we get will be published on an open platform and accessible to all.
Okay. When you say orbital and suborbital, for my audiences to understand, what is the difference?
Certainly. So the rocket we're using for this mission is a suborbital rocket, which means it flies directly up, makes a parabolic flight, and then comes straight back down.
Okay.
So it's about an 11-minute journey, and it goes to approximately 100 kilometers above Earth.
Okay.
And that is where the internationally recognized boundary of space is defined. That's called the von Karman line.
Okay.
Orbital, we're talking about going an additional 40 kilometers higher than that, but it takes an enormous amount of energy, more than the suborbital flight, to get to that altitude.
Okay. And for my understanding, people are going to these places to be able to do some research and find out more about space. If you can tell me, what is it that they will learn from there and give back that is so valuable to us?
In generally speaking, or on this mission?
Both.
Both. So on this mission, since we just spoke about that, we're looking at, cellular biology, fluid dynamics, and human physiology. So on the human physiology part, it's about understanding the stress that the human body goes through as it ascends at those speeds and deals with G-forces, and then has a moment in microgravity. Right. Okay. So all of our cells respond in microgravity in a different way. And so there's a lot of research that's going in that direction. That's the cellular biology component. So, genes express differently in microgravity. Viruses express differently in microgravity. So there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from looking at those things and bringing them back down here and saying, okay, well, we now learned something new about X or Y, and that can have a critical impact on our R&D and pharmaceutical for treating, a major problem in our country or our region or our planet. Okay. And it's the same logic that applies to the broader scale when we're talking about, research on the space station or samples we would take from the Venus, from the atmosphere in Venus or from Mars or land samples. All of that is informing our ability to develop new cures for things and new solutions for solving problems to perpetuate humanity's existence and survival.
Okay, and it has to do with gravity. So basically you're saying if you send somebody outside of the Earth into space and into maybe other planets, you are finding out how our bodies react differently to things at different spaces, which is what you bring back and do your research on for medical and health purposes also. Yes,
but also think about the fact that we have radiation in space, right? So as soon as we leave the Earth's atmosphere, we're in the pass through that through the ozone, we have significantly more radiation that we're exposed to. So the human body has to prepare to respond to that if we're going to plan to spend more time in those environments. There's a number of different areas that we can look into that could all be beneficial to our long-term survival in space. If we're going to be having projects that are going to colonize the moon or send humanity into Mars and the travel between the two, we have to start thinking about how we're going to adapt, and those adaptations, what we can learn today that can be beneficial. So that's on the physiology side, also the biology side. The third part of what we're looking at for our mission is the fluid dynamics. And so one thing that our partners brought to the table for us to consider was that on the space station, they use certain instrumentation for managing liquids. And you're often managing liquids when you're doing small biological experiments. And when you're in a microgravity environment, what happens when you release a little bit of liquid? It just goes up.
It flies up.
So there are ways to improve the instrumentation that is used on the space station. And so one of the things that we're looking at is a design challenge where individuals can submit different designs to help improve the experiment, the instruments that are used for experimentation, particularly when dealing with liquids.
Okay, coming back to the mission. Okay, I want our audiences to understand what this mission is. So you tell us why, and I know there are 6 people that from all over the world who are not astronauts that are getting an opportunity to access space through this mission. Okay, why is it so important to do that, and what will happen when that happens? What do we gain?
Well, we gained 6 new astronauts.
Okay.
Right. There's only about 700 people in the history of humanity who've been to space. So that's 6 new perspectives on what it means to see the Earth from above at that level. For a lot of these individuals, it will be either a first or a second time astronaut for the entire country. So that's an element of national pride. It's a way to invigorate STEM research and STEM individuals who are excited about studying STEM in their countries or whatever that might be. It's also a way to shift awareness towards entrepreneurship in the new space economy, that this is happening. Someone who is my neighbor actually just went to space. And so wait a second, maybe I should think about how that is. A lot of us are disconnected on a daily basis from the fact that we're using space technology for GPS coordinates, for making telephone calls. We're looking at tons of solutions for global, for environment monitoring, right, and weather positioning and all. There's a lot of stuff that we can learn still from space that is near in not complex, long-term, human space travel, but stuff that's servicing us today here on Earth. And, for farmers in India could be planning better their crop rotations, right? These types of things. So all of that discussion can certainly arise from having 6 new astronauts if they're representatives for the first time from their countries. So what else can they bring back, right? Well, hopefully some of the science that is done is meaningful and is something that can contribute to the discussion around scientific discovery in the space. And it can hopefully put a focus on the idea that suborbital travel can potentially have some scientific research value beyond just orbital, because it's a lot cheaper to send people and things to suborbital. So those are kind of the baseline things.
So for example, if I went to space and I am not a scientist or don't have the knowledge about anything that will help you guys directly, what is it that I will bring back as that individual astronaut from India that will help all of us?
Well, on one level, it's looking in the mirror, right? Like what everyone has a story to tell. And most of the people who have traveled to space to date have come from backgrounds as engineers, as fighter pilots, as, military veterans, and somewhat more recently, high net worth individuals who've afforded a ticket. The idea of the citizen astronaut, or the, even space tourist as it's called, and it hasn't been around for very long. And having somebody who has a completely different background, who can relate with everyday people about what it was like to be up there, is something that'll be completely different. So that's a new perspective. That's a fresh perspective. It's an opportunity to share in that culture, in that language, a story that's never been shared before.
Right.
So that's unique in its own right.
And what was the thought behind reserving a seat for India to go to space?
So when we were putting the mission together, we obviously were looking for countries that have had few or no astronauts. Most of those countries don't have a very strong space program, or they don't have one at all. And when we look at India, it's a little bit different, right? India has a very strong national space program. Fantastic success on the recent mission,
Chandrayaan.
Upcoming missions, astronauts planned. There are, I think, 34% of all STEM graduates globally are coming from India. So it's an intellectual powerhouse, an engineering resource. I think there's 300 new startups in the new space economy coming from India. So there's so much work going into satellites, new rocket technology, propulsion, communication systems. All that is going to help India scale and get a bigger percentage of the global share for the new space economy. And I think it's projected to go from 2 to something like 8% in the coming years. So that's all a meaningful reason for us to come to India, right? Space isn't such a far reaching concept when we say, hey, you could potentially go to space. It's something that could land here. Also, we have demographics, right? Aside from the number of STEM students, India has a very strong media industry. There's a very large population. It has a burgeoning economy. It's well positioned globally in terms of some of the other countries we're looking at in Southeast Asia to participate in the mission. So for us, India was a very natural choice. And we had a meeting with the gentleman from InSpace, which is an arm of the government space apparatus. And they said, guys, why don't you bring this to India? And we said, well, we hadn't thought about India because you're so strong in space. And they said, but, this idea of a citizen astronaut coming from India would be incredible.
Yes.
And, the participation would be very high. So we came out for a visit and decided that, India was a wonderful place for us to do this. And we've made great partnerships over the last number of months. And it's now become, I think, about over a year that we've been developing this narrative and partnership stuff here. And we're very happy to be here.
And how is the partnership working out for now?
It's great. I mean, we have a relationship with InSpace, who's helped us participate in a satellite competition through schools. We're doing a number of things in terms of grassroots outreach across all the entire country for individuals that are excited about space research and astronomy through 2 different organizations. And then we have a media partnership with our friends over at Banijay Asia. And they've been helping us to position our TV format to find the right partners both here in India and then in Southeast Asia. So we've been talking with partners in Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia, Malaysia, all things on the roadmap toward growing this business so that we can do more and more missions of this nature.
Before we get to more missions, again, I want to ask you that now our audiences need to understand how can they be the one to be able to get that seat to go to space? What is it that they have to do and how do they go about it?
We built an app which exists inside of Telegram. And we did this because we have Telegram through an organization called the Open Network, which is a blockchain that became our partner and saw the value in this as a way to bring a large number of people into Web3 and utilize Web3 technology in a meaningful way at scale for something that could be transformative. So there was strong alignment there. We built the mini app as a mission control center. So think about it as a space agency in your pocket. Okay. You download Telegram if you don't have it. You sign up for the app. It's completely free. So is Telegram. And you'll create a profile. Once you have your profile, then you can start performing tasks that are listed within the app. And those tasks are everything from inviting friends to posting on social media about why you want to go to space. And as you do those tasks, you accumulate points in our system, which are called space dust. As you accumulate space dust, you rise up the leaderboard to gain awareness and visibility about your campaign. And all the while, you're ultimately looking for friendships and alliances within the app and then within your community, within your country, because you need to win the votes of those people to win the seat on the rocket. So the competition's broken up into a number of phases. And in each phase, there are different drivers. In the first phase, it's about earning space dust. In the second phase, it's about unlocking your astronaut candidate badge by way of having enough space dust. And it's about then getting your friends who are in the system to support your campaign, ultimately in the way of votes. And the individual who has the most votes from the country will win the seat. And the voting will all take place on the blockchain, so it's transparent and auditable.
And how do you make sure that this is not just a popularity contest?
Elections in their own right are popularity contests to a certain extent, but you need to have some substance. And so we have a number of mechanisms to balance the sheer, order of magnitude that someone could bring in terms of their following on social media. And those are different types of challenges. Okay. So within the app itself, you can access our AI, which is called SERA, and she is trained with a number of riddles and games. Okay. And there will be ways to challenge people's prowess in, space research, in sci-fi, in things that can, everything from more challenging technical things to things that could be fun. And that's a way to unlock space dust if you're not somebody who wants to spend time, telling the world about your interest in going to space on social media.
Okay, so this is basically a decentralized platform. It's run on Telegram. Anybody can go to Telegram and have a profile then created on the SERA app. After this mission, this is one of the missions that are happening. Are there going to be missions after that? And also, these people that go to space on this mission, when they come back, do they have more opportunities or what is it unlocking for them?
Right. So let's go with the first part, which is yes, we intend to do this mission as many times as seems valid. Like we'd like to do it annually. It may become something that becomes more frequent than that, depending on regional interest and how we plan things out. We also have more ambitious plans to do things beyond just suborbital on this human spaceflight program that we've developed. It can be both human and it could also be just research focused. So there's a lot of room to grow, literally, as we expand beyond this particular remit.
Okay.
In terms of the individuals and the return, so in 2022, we did this once. And the individual who won the seat is a Brazilian. He was working as a civil engineer at the time.
Okay.
He basically became a member of SERA and then won the opportunity to go to space. He took that opportunity. He became Brazil's second ever astronaut.
Wow.
And with that became quite famous in Brazil over a course of a number of weeks because the media attention was quite intense. And we were prepared to a certain extent for that, but we didn't necessarily knew what it meant for his, medium and long term. We thought, yes, this person will become an ambassador to the program. Yes, this person will have a meaningful story to tell in their country, potentially even beyond that. And they could become someone who's a, science and STEM advocate, space enthusiast, a communicator in their market. And I think all of those things have happened with Victor.
Okay.
Victor now works with us full time.
Oh, great.
He called up not long after the flight and he said, I can't do what I'm doing anymore. I need to
join hands.
I need to pay this forward. I need to help bring this opportunity to other people.
Oh.
And so we were elated to have him join the team. He's a spokesperson. He's an ambassador to the mission, and he's somebody who is fortunately a very strong business leader. So he's helping with all the new space economy stuff in Brazil, and he's a new business development lead for us in Latin America. And so, Victor has been great. And we would like to see that model replicated. Obviously, everybody has their own life and ambitions and will do different things after they come back. The assumption is that this experience will be transformative enough that they'll have space as part of their lives, and that message that they'll pay forward will hopefully encourage others to go and pursue the same dreams.
Okay. What feeling do you think people would come back with after they've gone to space?
Well, I mean, I can only share Victor's story because that's the closest I've been. And it was an experience that transformed his life.
Okay.
He stopped doing what he was doing, and he's now changed his career arc to dedicating himself to helping bring that opportunity to others.
Okay. Tell me, how expensive is it to send somebody to space?
That's one that I don't necessarily have the answer for today. We know Blue Origin does not publicly share the cost of launch for individual seats.
Okay.
I believe Virgin Galactic has made their information public. You could do a quick research on that. And for orbital travel, it is significantly more expensive than for suborbital. So to send someone to the space station, you have a much higher launch cost. You have all the preparations that need to be made, and then you have the cost of being on the space station over X number of days that you're there, right? So CO2 scrubbing and your presence on the space station. So they're different leagues, right?
Okay. Tell me, then how do you fund something like this? Is it investors, is it sponsorship, or is it community-led?
So it's all three.
Okay.
Right. So our business model is predicated on building a large community. And in the first instance, as a company, as a private initiative, we have to raise capital and have sufficient resources to be able to put a mission like this together. So that's on us. And we see the model in one view as something like the Olympics or the World Cup, where there are a number of sponsors that see value in this, the international collaboration, the life-changing stories, the human stories that come with it, the meaningful science research that's being conducted, the live event of the launch itself that's a spectacle, and then backtracking all the way to the origin story of this, the person who had the dream to go to space and then gets to achieve this like an Olympic dream. And so we see sponsorship dollars coming there. We also have media licensing, so licensing the rights to make the TV show, which is something we've successfully done already in Thailand. We have a number of deals in the pipeline. And then we have the in-app ecosystem itself, where there are opportunities for monetization, merchandise, and so on and so forth. So there are ways we can grow the business through community involvement, as in terms of financial participation and support. There are ways we can grow the business from sponsorship, and there are ways we can grow directly through revenue.
Got it. What are these TV shows around? The mission to go?
Yeah, so we developed a TV format that looks at some of the challenges that the individuals will face as they go on this journey. And so we replicate these as like an astronaut training of sorts that has an exciting number of made for TV challenges that can be done. There's a competition, you have, nice dialogue and debate, you have a resulting winner, and ultimately all these are driven by, the community vote. So it's a community driven decision, but you have at least a platform on which the contestants can do things that can then be viewed by the community as though you were going to have a debate for an election, right? At least you get people out and you get them doing something and you get something experiential. And so, you have to adapt these things for each market. Each television market or each media market has slightly different preferences and tastes. So we think about them in different ways. Each market also has its own infrastructure, and where are we going to shoot this? Oh, do we have space infrastructure in that country? Is there somewhere we can do these challenges that's more visually stunning than others? We have access to some facilities in the United States that are very attractive. Here in India, there's obviously facilities that we can use or can be built, right? So there's lots of different approaches to doing that, but ultimately this is something that's not so far out there in terms of understanding, right? We bring a bunch of people together, we tell the human stories, we have some interaction, we have some competition, and ultimately it results in, a whittling down to a few winners and then a final winner.
Interesting. As a regular person, I would not imagine that anybody can go to space, because maybe you don't have to be an astronaut, but I'm sure you need extensive training to be able to go to space, right?
So the word astronaut comes, has two meanings, right? There's the understanding we have of, it's a lifelong career and you need to have this background of engineering and have gone and been a fighter pilot and then be chosen. And so it comes with a lot of baggage. Then there's the other side of the word astronaut, which means someone who went to space, right? The actual, definition. So we actually like to think about it as like a journey to space and not so much this career arc of being an astronaut. And, when we get out there and communicate with people about it, oftentimes we'll say, hey, you could be an astronaut. And it just results in sort of a non-starter, right? They don't get it because they think they need to have 10 years or 20 years or 30 years of training to be able to do that. So for this journey on the New Shepard, you only have 3 days of training on site in West Texas. And those days of training are largely just safety protocol preparation.
Okay. That's all they tell you. What is the actual training that is required to be able to go to space? Safety protocols.
For this mission?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's all the training that has to be done.
And there must be some level of age, you said rightly, but like physical fitness and alertness and things like that.
So technically speaking, you have to be over 18 years of age at the time of flight. Blue Origin has already flown William Shatner, who was 90 years old at the time of flight. So it's safe to say that, you don't have to have the physical fitness that you would imagine. Okay. So it's accessible to most.
Tell me, what is the risk involved in going to space? Because I'm sure there is so much. Like, that's also the first thing that comes to mind for a regular person, that if I go to space, oh my God, like it's very risky.
If you look at the safety record of space travel over time, and I don't have the data with me, but I think that there's a pretty strong argument that they've got a tried and tested technology that has, successfully brought people up and down from space on a number of occasions. Certainly there have been issues, as there have been in air travel and car travel and all sorts of other types of travel. And so, in terms of, quantifying that risk, I suggest that your listeners go out and take a look at looking at the risk on this particular rocket. They've had, I think, 35 or 36 successful flights now, a number of which have been human crewed. They have an incredibly redundant safety system that in one instance has actually been deployed and successfully worked. So, there's a lot of rigorous testing and knowledge about the technology that they're using. And so I think that that's something that you can look at and say, okay, it's working, people are doing it, it's happening. And then you could look at the other side of it and say, well, hey, this is a this is a rocket that's full of fuel and it's going to go really fast. And on that side, it certainly is scary to some. And, maybe it isn't for everyone.
No, where this is coming from, I tell you, is because recently Sunita Williams went to space and her trip was supposed to be for, I think, 8 or 9 days. And then she was stuck there for 9 months. And she's a NASA astronaut. So isn't it really risky then?
Yeah. So, we're certainly proposing a round trip ticket. And the New Shepard, because it's a suborbital flight, it goes up and it's a parabolic flight. As I said, it goes up and it comes right back down. So it actually lands in the same area where it took off. It doesn't have this big trajectory like these other flights where they land out in the ocean after being away for a long time. So you're up and 11 minutes back down, you're landing about a mile from where you took off.
Okay.
So the round trip probabilities there are very good.
Okay. And after this mission, would you have regular people doing bigger missions? Is that something that's possible?
Yeah. I certainly hope to have, bigger missions as we move forward, as I mentioned. This human spaceflight program was designed because the rocket doesn't require a lot of training and preparation. The individual could have their job the whole time and then take off just the time for the training and then the flight and then come back and live their lives, as opposed to maybe doing an orbital flight where you would have to go and do training for 6 months and prepare for that. So can we have regular people doing those type of missions in the future? Yes. And is that something that's going to happen in 2026? Not yet.
Okay. And tell me, while setting this up as a company, did you have a lot of roadblocks in terms of safety for being able to set this up?
So we have a collaboration with Blue Origin, which is the American aerospace company founded by Jeff Bezos. They have been around, I think, 20 years now. They have, a orbital vehicle that they've just started launching. They have the suborbital vehicle. They build their own engines. It's a very big enterprise. They're the ones who are dealing with the FAA in the United States. They're the ones who are doing all the safety testing and protocols. They're the technology provider in that sense. And so we're working with them and using their rocket, and we're creating this social gamified media layer around that, and then plan to build bigger and more ambitious missions on other rockets as we move forward.
Understood. Okay. One of the main questions that I have for anybody that's working in this space research industry is that we're spending billions of dollars to be able to send people to space for all of these reasons. But how do you justify that when there are so many unresolved issues back at home?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And I think every country is asking themselves that. And there are, as we talked about, an enormous amount of resources in outer space, all of which could be benefiting us here on Earth and reducing scarcity of resources that we're working to save, or negotiating with our neighboring countries or partners to try to accumulate more of. And as we see the geopolitical landscape now, that's something that's more and more in the headlines as the trade balances are, a big focal point for governments in negotiation. The easiest answer is that we should be able to do two things at the same time, right? We should be able to be working on our problems here on Earth and then also exploring what the high frontier has to offer. And in saying that, like I said, some of the things in the high frontier may help us alleviate some of the problems here on Earth. And other things may just become about unlocking a new potential and having that be a way to alleviate like a day-to-day issue that somebody's not thinking about right now.
How does that work? For example, if we're dealing with so much of poverty, hunger, diseases, inequality, environmental issues, right? We should be spending our resources on fixing this problem, right? Rather than going to space.
Okay, so back to the same idea. Where we have data centers that are all over and they're consuming huge amounts of energy to stay cool so that we can all, run our social media applications and have data being processed at the speed that we expect it to be processed. If those were in space, we'd have significantly more solar energy going into them and a lot less energy coming off of the planet here. And they'd be a lot cooler and a lot more efficient. So you're already then pulling carbon out of the environment, which is making it better for our, climate change challenges. It's making it easier for day-to-day living. We're not going to take up real estate space in places. All of that is, you can put that across a number of different problems, right? So when we talk about scarcity of resources, there's rare earths up in space. There's copper, nickel, gold, all of these things that are things that we're using, right? Your cell phone's full of them. So is your car. These are all things that are in abundance there, and extracting those from space, bringing them down here to Earth is also something that's going to alleviate a lot of the environmental issues that are coming from mining and mineral extraction here on the planet.
If that was possible, wouldn't we have already gotten that? Like all the resources that we're using, you're saying, is available on the other planets, but we're not able to extract it and get it out here. You're saying that that is a possibility.
Yes. So if we think about what I said at the top of the interview, we've been focused on space as a pursuit for national security interest. If we focused our pursuit in commercial interests of outer space, which we're starting to do now, we'll start to unlock these things in a different way. Also, when it comes to disease here on Earth, there are likely to be a number of different research discoveries that will be extracted from outer space to help us cure disease here on Earth. And that could be anything we talked about in the virus or like in microbiology stuff. To help us understand gene expression and virus expression in outer space and how that can be used to benefit us here. So I think that the Blue Origin tagline is building the road to space for the benefit of us here on Earth, right? And so that has to be the mentality.
Right, even I believe so. But is there a case like that has happened in the past where we've gone to space and figured out a solution for back Earth that you can tell us?
In terms of human space flight or in terms of like satellites?
No, for research. Any flight that we've taken.
So a lot of the information that we have in terms of like, carbon offsetting and deforestation and like whether that is policing that information or finding out more about weather patterns and change, that's all coming from satellite technology, right? So that's all imaging that we're capturing from space because we sent satellites to space.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, do you think that we as humans want to go to space because we want to explore the unexplored or because we want to just escape where we are and what we believe?
I think that the deeper, compulsion to explore is a part of our DNA. Oftentimes on anybody's certain, given day, they might feel like they want to escape and do something different. But I think to turn the escape discussion into something that's more about, humanity's survival and existential, thought. Like we see Elon making these investments. We see Jeff Bezos making these investments for the reason that we need to start planning for what a multiplanetary species looks like, right? How does that come together? And having a backup plan, quote unquote, is something that is, it's a realistic discussion. What happens if the planet is no longer capable of sustaining the population that we have on Earth? It's a reality that we need to think about what life looks like beyond that. Now, that doesn't mean we should immediately think, well, let's just escape and let go of what's going on here, right? Because that's what we've been talking about this whole time. Let's use space to benefit us here on Earth and alleviate our problems. One of the main drives is to accessing the high frontier and to be able to conduct this research and extract this knowledge and bring it back here is that we can help solve some disease problems and environmental problems that can benefit us every day.
Okay. I saw this documentary years ago on Netflix. It's called Conspiracies. And so I'm going to talk to you about that, about the moon landing. There are 12 people that walked the surface of the moon. After that, how come no one's ever gone to the moon? The documentary states that it's a conspiracy theory.
So I don't have an answer to exactly why, but I think programs were discontinued, resources were shifted out of certain departments. There's been less of a focal point on the moon. I think those are more the administrative bits. As we all know, it's not very easy to land someone on the moon. India has now very successfully landed a rover on the south pole of the moon. And I believe there's a number of upcoming lunar missions, both from the Chinese, from India, from the United States. And I think we'll see a number of people on the moon in the near future. And we'll start talking about having permanent infrastructure there.
So I love a lot of movies that have to do with the space. So like Interstellar and Gravity and those. How much of what they show in these movies is what space actually is?
I've never been to space and I've seen all those movies. And so I can only guess what the difference is, right? Some of them are known to depict space in ways that astronauts and astrophysicists have said to be more accurate than others. But I can't really weigh in on that debate. I can weigh in on which sci-fi movies I like the most.
Would you personally like to go to space yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that in the works?
I can say that neither Sam nor I have immediate plans to use any of our upcoming missions to fly ourselves to space, but certainly both have an interest in going at some point. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me, since you work in this space department, must be answering a lot of strange questions. What is the strangest question that somebody's asked you about space?
The best question that we get on a regular basis is, can I send my pet to space?
Pet.
And yeah, because
Okay.
everybody wants to send their cat or their dog to space. It seems to be a huge,
really?
a lot of demand for that. But on a more serious level, I think the strangest question we get is that after sharing everything that we share with you today and your audience is going to hear, and we share this regularly, I'll get out and do a speech at a conference, or we'll do an interview or anything. And despite saying, hey, you only need to be 18 or over, you don't have to have a background in science, you don't have to be a fighter pilot, you don't have to be a billionaire, you're eligible for this flight. The number one question we get at the end of all that is, wait, am I actually eligible to go? And the answer is yes.
Yes, because like I said, a lot of us assume that you need a lot of extensive training to be able to go to space, and not like we know everybody can go to space. And that's what you're promoting. So that's great. I actually want to end this conversation with asking you about the mission. Why is it so important to have a regular person go to space? And then what do we see after? Like after this mission, do we see a lot more missions, and what are they going to be like?
So on the regular person, quote unquote, going to space, that one for us is about diversity of backgrounds and making this opportunity open to everyone. Individuals who have a different background are going to have a different experience, and they're going to bring back a different story and have a different value add in terms of what space means to all of us. And so that is the door we want to open.
Okay. And what are the upcoming missions after that you see happening?
So, well, we intend to continue this human spaceflight program. There are a number of countries. I think it's somewhere near 140 plus countries globally that have never had an astronaut. We'd like to continue to change that through this human spaceflight program, and to continue to focus on that suborbital research we talked about earlier. And then we'd like to get more ambitious. Would we certainly like to send people, to one of the new space stations upcoming? Absolutely. Right? Would we like to be participating in, Mars and Venus research that is just research orientated? Yes, absolutely. Would we like the community who comes together to become what is SERA, to propose their own missions and design those missions and help bring together the right human resources and financial resources to make those a reality using our tools and our community? Absolutely.
Okay. So I know it's decentralized and you want the community to decide. But if you had to say that this is the kind of person that would be ideal as a candidate to go to space, what would that look like?
Somebody who dreamed they always wanted to go to space and never thought they could. I mean, it's that simple. It really is meant to be the everyday individual that had that dream, that has that passion, that wants to get out and tell the story, because we believe that's the same person who will come back after the experience and share that story and pay it forward, just like Victor has.
That's great. I think it's a fabulous one, because a lot of people dream of going to space, like a lot, but we clearly don't have the access to or the information to be able to go to space. And to close this, I have to tell you a story about my interaction with space when I was young. We have these two centers over here, not very far from where we are, called Nehru Science Center and Nehru Planetarium. And when you go to the planetarium, you can literally lie down and there's a 3D cinema screen where you see every different planet up close. And you feel like you're right there. Like you see the moon, you see Mars, you see the rings of Saturn. And that was my first expedition with space. And it was very, very fascinating to be able to see a completely new world. And the other cool thing over there is when you go outside, there are different booths that you can go to that tells you your weight on each planet. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think all of us as kids have gone to and experienced and are very fascinated about. I think it's great what you are building. I love the mission, and I hope that we have a great candidate from India to be able to go to space and tell their story back when they come.
Thank you. Hopefully your audience will find this equally as exciting, and we'll have a number of signups, and hopefully somebody that is a regular follower is the individual
Could be one of
who
those.
Finds their way to space.
And I'm glad, and I'm hoping that I can use that on my platform to be able to tell their story also. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching another episode. If you still have questions, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.